Welcome to Castle Combe and welcome to what is set to be another momentous occasion as they recreate the original 1966 historic sports car racing grid. The Griffith Racing Formula, which took place in that year, was for sports cars pre-1955. And there's some incredible cars on this grid. I dread to think how much money is on this grid. And D Type number 2, that you can see behind me there, which is actually a recreation D Type. It's not one of the ones that raced here in 1966, although there is another one of those on the grid, will be my seat for that ride around Castle Combe for the recreation of that very special 1966 grid. That was where this started. That was where historic sports car racing started. Arguably, Goodwood came from that. Everything that you see historic sports car-wise came from that grid in 1966. It's been recreated here. It was done yesterday, and the weather was just about kind to us yesterday for it. But as you can see, the grid is absolutely packed today. And I'm going to just speak to Penny Woodley, who back then in 1966, 50 years ago, was Penny Griffiths. And Penny, you flagged these cars away. You're live on Periscope. You flagged these cars away, didn't you?
I did indeed, yes. You wouldn't believe it was 50 years ago, would you?
No, you wouldn't.
I stood on some rickety steps and dropped the Union flag.
And you're going to do the same today, just like you did yesterday?
Absolutely, yes. We've got to keep the record going, haven't we?
And of course, this was your father's idea. He thought, all these cars are just sitting around, you know, they're 10, 15 years old now. No one's doing anything with them, so let's go racing. That was it, wasn't it?
It was. Back then, the cars were about 10, 15 years old. There wasn't a class for them to race anywhere. Vintage Sports Car Club didn't want them. They only wanted single-seaters. So he thought, I've got to do something about this. And his great friend was Betty Haig, who was a part of the Frazer Nash Owners Club. And they got together and thought, we'll do something here with the association of the Frazer Nash Owners Club. I think we can just rescue these and we can get a race series going, which is what they did. So yeah, this is the culmination of it. 50 years later, where you have lovely races at Silverstone, Goodwood, Nürburgring, all over the world now.
So Penny will be flagging the cars away. There's a great story, thank you, Penny. There's a great story of one of these C Type Jaguars in this grid costing £635 50 years ago. 635 quid for a C Type Jag. Probably priceless now. There's a Ferrari 166, which you can just see over here, which is absolutely glorious. That car is being driven by Bernard, who was here 50 years ago in that race. And that car wasn't able to be sold. No one wanted to buy it. Back in 1966, these sports cars were sort of obsolete. No one wanted to do anything with them. That Ferrari Type 166 with its 2-litre V12 engine just couldn't find a buyer. Imagine that. They'd be queuing round the block if that thing got auctioned these days. It's not being auctioned. It's being driven here in this fantastic historic sports car club recreation grid. And you can see Bernard, who raced the car back then, sat here in his car waiting to go. Bernard, if I can just have a quick word. I know we did this yesterday as well, but here you are, and you're in the racing gear. What were you wearing back in 1966 when you raced this car at Castle Combe?
Well, it was a Herbert Johnson helmet.
Fantastic. And there was just no safety, was there, back then?
Pardon?
No safety in the cars, was there, compared to now?
Oh, no. Well, I mean, there's not much safety now, really, but there's no weather equipment in this. You just have to get on with it.
So 50 years ago, you were telling me the wonderful story about this Ferrari, how it came into the UK in 1957, but no one wanted to buy it, did they?
No, it was just a little advert in the Autocar or Motor, and I answered the advert and went to see it, and then hummed and hawed a bit and had an accident racing, and when I could walk again a few weeks later, I went to see it again, and no one had been to buy it, and I managed to buy it for a bit less than he was advertising it. And that was from the chief designer of Rolls-Royce at Crewe.
Fantastic. And this thing came into the UK through Checkered Flag, a name that our rally fans who are watching will recognise from the Stratuses, but there's also a Formula Ford Lotus here with the Checkered Flag colour scheme as well. What a name as well to have bought this car from.
Yes, Graham Warner was the Checkered Flag man, and he sold it to Vivian Stanbury up in Cheshire, and I bought it from him.
Fantastic story. Enjoy this again, Bernard, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. 50 years on, you didn't believe you'd be racing this car again at Combe, did you?
No.
But you're not racing today. This is a recreation of the grid.
Just a run round, yes. Yeah.
I'm going out in D Type number 2 at the front, so
Oh, well, enjoy that. You should do.
I will do. That's the realisation of a childhood ambition. Enjoy that, Bernard. How fantastic. He's not the only person here with a car that raced in 1966 either. There's some of the original drivers, some of the original cars that they've got together, the Historic Sports Car Club, for this 50th anniversary weekend. You'll see on our TV show in a couple of weeks' time the full atmosphere and all the variety of racing that we've had this weekend. But this grid is just something that I thought I should share with you live on Periscope. We did it yesterday, and today I have managed to, very jammy, bag the seat in the leading car, the D Type number 2, which is actually a recreation D Type, but it's faithful. It's a faithful car. And that's going out on this recreation grid in about 10-15 minutes. We'll just have another walk down this grid of cars before I go out in that car, but I'll go live on Periscope. We've got some content for the TV show that will be going out, but you can actually watch me live in the D Type. Somebody on the screen, this is very difficult to read in the sunshine, but somebody's just asked when the TV show is going out. I'm going to try and find one of our TV crew who are around here somewhere who'll be able to tell me when the TV show goes out. I think it's 2 weeks on Friday or something like that. In fact, producer Wayne is just wandering around with some camera equipment. That's what he generally does. But all the details are on. It was J-Deem. Hello, mate. Thank you for tuning in. If you're just joining me, I'm on the 66 Recreation Grid at Castle Combe for the Historic Sports Car Club 50th anniversary weekend. Some of these cars and drivers lined up 50 years ago to kick off the historic sports car racing revolution. And it is that, isn't it? Producer Wayne, can I just ask you when the TV show is going out? You're not going to know the date off the top of your head, are you? 4 weeks. Okay, 4 weeks, guys. But if you follow SSTV Race on Twitter, if you check out the website, all the details will be on there. This is our first foray into motor racing. I'm a motor racing fan. We've brought you Rally TV since something like 2009, but well, actually, it's probably a bit earlier than that. I'm a motor racing fan. These cars, I grew up goggling at, looking at old copies of Car and Car Conversions, walking around the paddock this weekend. That's what this has reminded me of. An old copy of Car and Car Conversions that you might pick up in an auto jumble. Do they even still do those? They're not as good as they used to be, are they? And it's just watching people tinkering with suspension, watching the suspension, the swing arms moving in the corners. These cars are just something else. If you can get to any historic racing, I urge you to do so. And for our part of this, for this race TV project, just like we've done with the rallying, we see ourselves as representatives of the sport, and we will be doing our bit to get as many people involved as possible, drivers, spectators, and what have you. There are loads of ways of getting into motorsport and historic racing. As you'll see from some of the people we speak to in the TV show, it's one of those ways. I appreciate this isn't BBC quality filming, but at least you can see what we're doing here. We will have better footage on the grid walk. I don't know if you can see this absolutely glorious Allard here. This car here was driven by a man called Fred, and I'm going to speak to him in a minute because he has done, over the years, over 300,000 miles in this Allard. And he raced it here 50 years ago for the Historic Sports Car Meeting at Castle Combe, which is why we are here on this grid with these beautiful cars. And it's why we're doing a TV show for you, and it's why we're live on Periscope right now, just giving you a flavour for what you can see in the show in a few weeks' time. Slotus Bristol is just something else, isn't it? Look at that. You just don't see these cars. And to have them all in one place together on this grid is just incredible. That is my ride, the number 2 D Type, leading the way. I never thought I'd be leading albeit a recreation race, but a race of sorts, in a D Type Jag. Incredible. I agree, it is incredible. I'm seeing the comments pop up on the screen from time to time, but it is very sunny here, so it's hard to... If anybody could give me a nod on the comments, by the way, if the sound's okay, because we're actually using a bit of a strange mic setup for this, and I was hoping it would be better than bringing you just the iPhone sound, because I am live on iPhone. Just walking around, giving you another look. Very good sound, thank you for that. Look at that. Frazer Nash, a name synonymous with historic racing. And there's a handful, there must be 5 or 6 Frazer Nashes on this grid. Original cars, some of these cars are priceless. if you're just joining me, I was explaining earlier that some of the original cars and drivers that lined up on this grid 50 years ago will be heading out on track again at Castle Combe for this. There's Craig Smith, our cameraman, our special stage race TV cameraman, just doing a walk by of the cars. One of my personal favourites in the classic car world is the Austin Healey 3000, and look at that. There's just so many beautiful cars, and the weather has really come out for us today. The crowds on this grid are something else. I'm going to have to count the number of cars on the grid now, aren't I? I'm going to ask somebody who knows, because I can't actually see them all because of the amount of people. People are asking how many cars are on the grid. Who can I ask? Who can give me a bit of a gen up on how many cars are on this grid? Mr. Paul Lawrence is looking after us on the PR side this weekend. I'll see if I can spot him. I can. Okay, I'm going to ask some questions. If you want any questions asking, technical questions about the grid, ask me now, because I found the man who knows. How many cars on the grid, Paul?
We've got about a dozen.
Paul Lawrence, you might know, especially if you're a rally man. We've got Steve Gregg and other people tuned into this who you'll know.
Hello, Steve. How you doing? I think we've got a dozen today. We had about 15 yesterday, but a couple of them have gone home. The guys with the Jarrett Duper have gone back to France, believe me. But yeah, great lineup. Really pleased with it.
And great weekend as well. 50th anniversary for the HSCC, which you're heavily involved with.
Yep, it's a big day for the HSCC. Started here 50 years ago, and we're celebrating in style. And this is part of a whole season of sort of 50 celebration type events. But this is a key one. This is where it all started, and a lot of these cars were here racing in 1966.
It's a fantastic grid. Paul Lawrence looking after the PR side of things this weekend. You will know him. He's no stranger to the rally folk. Of course, press officer for the British Historic Rally Championship, which we cover. No problem. Found out how many cars are on the grid. If you need any more questions answering, there are plenty of people here who can answer them for me. I'm going to see if I can grab a quick word with Fred in a second. I'm just in awe of all these cars. I'm walking around looking at, you know, a full range of people, age-wise as well, which is fantastic. Some children on the grid, right through to the people who raced here 50 years ago in these very cars in some cases. That's what motorsport is all about. Somebody said to me this weekend, in fact it was one of the racing drivers, that the future of motorsport is history. You have to say that's not a bad way of looking at the way that motorsport is going, because you could buy one of these cars, not one of these ones, but one of the Formula Fords or one of the more accessible cars that you can see racing this weekend in the TV show in a few weeks' time. And in a few years after you sell it, it'd be worth at least the same, if not more. So it's an investment, it's fun. It's not quite as expensive as you would probably imagine in some of the categories, and if you don't want to get in a car or you really can't afford to do that, then there are ways of getting involved, such as marshalling or getting involved with a TV crew, for example. Ways of enjoying historic motorsport and getting in on the inside, talking to Fred, the chairman, and a few other people of the HSCC. That's what they are all about. They want people involved. So if you do want to get involved, get in touch with the HSCC and find out what would suit you, what role would suit you. If it's not driving, if it's not preparing cars, if it's not marshalling, what is it? That Allard there I was just mentioning, Fred, who is driving that car today, drove it 50 years ago, and he's done 300,000 miles in it. You should have a dig down the back, as I'm reading a comment on the screen. You should have a dig down the back of the sofa to see what you can find, because it's well worth getting out. Just to remind you, I'm not rubbing it in, but my ride for this grid recreation in 10 minutes probably is D Type number 2, which you can see here. The leading car, and we've got it all set up to film for the TV show. There's the professional bits, and this is where I will be sat, right in there, next to Ian Hedden, who actually built this recreation D-Type himself. We'll talk to Ian in a little bit, but this is the realisation of a big dream for me. This car just ready to lead the cars away on this recreation grid. There is a real D-Type here as well. Some of the cars, if you're just joining me, that raced here 50 years ago have joined us again today. I'm still looking for Fred, who was driving this Allard. The people who, of course, raced here 50 years ago are very popular here today. Everybody wants to talk to them. Everybody wants to find out what it was all about. If you've got a question for one of the guys who raced here, I'll do my best to look at the screen and answer it for you. I'll pose some questions to them. Here he is. Here's the man I wanted to speak to. Fred, we were just looking at your Allard that you were telling me yesterday you did over 300,000 miles.
Just under 3. It was 288,000 when I sold from my usage, but it had done 25 before that, before I bought it, because it had a number of previous owners. And I don't know how many miles it's done since that time.
So your road car at the time, and you decided you'd race it here at Castle Combe?
I used to race it every week, or race it, rally it, trial it, hill climb it, whatever, just about every weekend that I could afford to. Some weekends you couldn't afford to, in which case you stayed at home. But, you know, wherever possible, there was always an event on somewhere, and you just went and did it.
Thanks to the MSA and the BCRDA and other organisations, there are still events on somewhere every weekend.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And with a car like that, you can choose whatever event you want to, and it'll do well. It's, you know, the basic design of the car is just brilliant. I mean, Sydney Allard was quite brilliant. And I have to say, it's the car, not the driver. I never won anything when I wasn't driving Allards. But I won quite a lot of things driving Allards. And it wasn't the driver, it's just the car.
And 50 years ago, this car you drove here at Castle Combe, did you imagine that 50 years on you would be here on a recreation grid with some of your colleagues?
No, I never thought about what was going to happen beyond the following weekend.
I guess that was the way it was when you were racing back 50 years ago.
Yeah, it was. And that's, you know, that's not a comment made lightly. I mean, all you did was you lived from week to week and month to month, and it was, you know, you just took things as they came.
Here we are 50 years on talking about closed cockpits for Formula One cars, how things change.
Yeah, it's crazy. But, I mean, on the other hand, a lot of my friends were either injured or, in fact, a couple of them were killed in motorsport. And that hasn't happened in recent times. And at the end of the day, that's got to be a good thing.
It definitely has been. So talk to us about the Allard, because a lot of people joining us probably won't have even heard of Allard before. It's a name synonymous with historic racing, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is. It's not as well known as, for example, the D Type Jaguars that are sitting over there. But on the whole, you don't find terribly many D Types doing trials and rallies and sprints. Yes, they do circuit races and hill climbs, but you don't find them in the rough stuff. And that's just, you know, that's just a statement of fact. And if you ask somebody if he was going to put £2 or £3 million worth of D-Type onto an autocross course, I think most of the owners would decline.
I think they would as well. So what would you be talking compared to 2 to 3 million for one of these Allards then, roughly?
Well, that one was sold a couple of years ago for just on £500,000. I bought it for £320, and it was just great value for money. And
classic cars are still an investment, but that's pretty staggering.
It's good by any standards, but the nice thing is that because they're simple and they're strong, there's no reason why it shouldn't go on for another 50 years, even with the mileage that's on it.
I love the fact it's got nearly 300,000 on. So what's your favourite part about that car?
Oh, just the versatility of it. The fact you could use it drive it for work. You can go touring. You'll see the holes in the back there for a luggage grid, and you can put a ski rack on it, and you can go on skiing holidays with it, which I have done.
Thank you, Fred. Enjoy this grid recreation once again. Thank you for talking to us.
Thanks very much. Thanks, bye-bye.
Fred's going to be driving this car nearly 300,000 miles on this beautiful Allard. It's had ski racks on it. It's done tours, it's done rallies, it's done classic trials. It's been, as Fred puts it, on the rough stuff. It's worth around £500,000. He bought it for £320. It's incredible, isn't it? But the design of these cars is somewhat timeless. Safety could probably be described in the same way as well, but it's just an opportunity for me to walk around these cars, and we will, as I say, bring you a full feature in the TV show in a few weeks' time, but in the meantime, it's just a way to give you an experience and try and share with you what I'm doing today, because it's fairly special. If you have just tuned in, there's quite a few people joining us as we go through. We're doing a grid walk on a recreation of the HSCC 50th anniversary grid. The race that started it all, the race that started historic sports car racing. Goodwood, everything that you know in historic sports car terms came from this race, arguably. 50 years ago, 1966. We had 15 cars on the grid yesterday. Paul Lawrence, PR man here at the HSCC confirmed for me we have 12 here today. The weather's a lot more favourable today. And I'm going out in D Type number 2, which is leading the way today. It was near the back of the grid yesterday. If you've seen the Superman Batman movie, you will know that one of these cars is driven by Bruce Wayne in that movie. I got 10 minutes in and my wife decided to give birth, so we have got to go back and see that. I got as far as a Jeep driving around Metropolis, and Ben Affleck just arrived on screen and we had to leave the cinema. I think that might have happened in the past too. Probably. This Porsche is something special, look at this. Something that's been noted this weekend by myself and other people is how well prepared historic racing cars are these days. Absolutely stunning preparation, attention to detail like you've never seen. And cars just recreated faithfully to how they were when they were racing. I hear that we're about to get in the cars, get strapped in and get ready to go, so I'm going to cancel this broadcast. I'm going to end this one. I'm going to get strapped into D Type number 2, which you can see just down here, about to lead the cars away. We've GoPro'd it up for the TV show. I'm going to be sitting right about here. I'm just going to come around and speak to Ian before we get going, actually. I was speaking to you yesterday on the grid, Ian. I didn't, in my wildest dreams, imagine I'd be actually in the car today with you, but you're leading the way. Did you get a pretty good time on the parade lap yesterday?
I've no idea what time we got or anything. I just drove around and enjoyed it.
And that is exactly what this is all about. Of course, some of the guys here raced 50 years ago in these exact cars that they're racing today. This one you built yourself. It's a faithful D-Type replica.
It's a replica built in 1990. I did it all myself on a Proteus chassis. Knew Jim Marlin quite well from having a C-Type previously, and this is how it's turned out.
It's amazing how much even these replicas are worth. But we were talking to someone yesterday who bought a C-Type. You mentioned a C-Type. Bought a C-Type for £630 50 years ago to race in this. And now some of them are priceless, these cars.
They're worth well over $5 million. And I've got a friend who's got a C-Type and a D-Type, and he bought them quite reasonably, and he's sitting on a gold mine now.
Here's me wishing that I kept my 1988 XR2, but these guys sold C-Type Jaguars that are now worth upwards of $5 million. Wow. So Ian's going to take me out in this beautiful D-Type recreation on this 50-year anniversary lap here. It must just be such an incredible feeling driving these cars out here at Castle Combe, just as they were 50 years ago.
Yes, it's, mind you, I use the thing on the road quite regularly, and it doesn't hold the sort of special thing, really. But it's the first time I've driven around Castle Combe, which is very nice. I've been here many times, but first time I've driven around.
It's the first time I've gone round as a passenger on one of these. I've been round with Stig Blomqvist in an Audi Quattro Group E car. I've been out with a Ford Fiesta World Rally car with the World Rally Team, but I've never been in a car quite like this one. It's a realisation of a childhood dream for me. Hopefully you can enjoy the experience with me. I'm going to end this broadcast now, and in minutes I'm going to start another one, and I'll be in that D-Type number 2, setting off to lead the recreation parade laps here at Castle Combe in celebration of 50 years of historic sports car racing with the HSCC. Thank you for joining me just now. Back with you very soon.
Go.
You're joining me live from a D-Type. This is what historic sports cars are all about, perhaps. Struggling to get it started, smell of fuel, because obviously it takes a lot of fuel to get these things started, but they can easily flood. So we're on the grid for the 50th anniversary recreation. And if you can see some of these cars behind me, while I sat here. There's not a lot of room in this D Type. Look at that grid. And we're on. That's where the magic comes from. We're about to go live around Castle Combe for the 50th anniversary. I'm in with Ian Hedden in a D-Type recreation to celebrate 50 years of the historic sports car club. 50 years ago, this is where it all started. Goodwood, everything historic sports car related came from this. Over there you can see Penny Griffiths, who flagged away the cars 50 years ago using her maiden name, because of course that was what she was called back then. This was the brainchild of her father, and she's flagging away the cars as we set off. And it is so noisy. I don't know if you can hear this noise. I don't know if you can even hear me talking, but these cars are just incredible. We've been asked to keep to a 3-2-3 formation. I can only describe this as being as close to I'll ever get to being in a Spitfire or something, in flying in formation, driving around Castle Combe in a D-Type. The sound is excellent, apparently, believe me. The sound is excellent inside here as well. Ian Hedden there, driving this glorious car around Castle Combe. The weather's kind. We've got 2 days of excellent racing here. The fans are out in force. We're filming the TV show, and I have got the chance to bring you a live broadcast from a D-Type Jaguar. 1966, these cars first took to the track at Goodwood. And here they are doing it again. Some of the original cars and drivers from that original race are back here again. And just blipping down through the gears. Following the Castle Combe Honda Civic Type R safety car around this parade lap. It is just a parade lap, but the idea is to recreate some of the atmosphere and the spirit. If you can just see, I've got a Clarkson moment going on here with my hair, I accept, but just look at that next to me. It's just unbelievable. The Lotus Bristol just next to us on this recreation parade lap at Castle Combe. Behind me, if I can hold on to my phone, that glorious Ferrari Type 166 2-litre V12 in that car. And it was a coupe. It started off doing the Tour de France back in 1954 or 5. Came into the UK in 1957, being driven by the same driver it was driven 50 years ago by. J. Deems just asked how fast are we going. Not very fast, because it is a parade lap, but it certainly feels pretty fast. I'm looking at the speedo now. I don't know how well you can hear this, but it sounds glorious from where I'm sitting. I'm going to try and give you a look at the fin on this thing, because of course the distinguishing feature about the D-Type is that fin there. That is what children dream of D-Type Jaguars for. And look at it. It's just amazing. Coming down the start-finish straight here. Special stage TV crew filming there for our TV show, which you can see in a few weeks' time. This is just something live. Bernard trying to get past in his Type 166 Ferrari there. That car you can see just there over my shoulder raced here 50 years ago. Just look at that. Live from Castle Combe in a D-Type Jaguar with a Type 166 Ferrari back where it first started 50 years ago. Little plug there for Classic and Sports Car Magazine. This car, this D Type that I'm riding in, is a recreation, a faithful recreation D Type. Built on proper Jaguar chassis and running gear, just like the original cars. 1990 it was built by the driver, the guy who's driving it today, Ian Heading. And look at that. Overtaken just as it might have been in 1966. That feeling less and less like a parade lap every time we get a car alongside us. Ian finally getting a chance to get out on track in this thing. He drives it on the road, just playing with a Type 166 Ferrari. As you do, Ian. How does this feel for you?
Fine.
Enjoying it?
It's good fun, yeah. Yeah. I haven't driven the car for a couple of years, and I'm enjoying it.
And it sounds amazing, doesn't it?
If you say so.
I do say so. Let's have a look what's behind us. A special stage GoPro. The spectators out at Quarry here at Castle Combe actually have been looking forward to this today. We were talking to some of them earlier, and the ones that missed the recreation grid and formation lap from yesterday, really looking forward to getting out today. You're riding it. A D Type Jaguar. .166 Ferrari there. Bernard Worth driving that car, if you're just joining me, drove it here 50 years ago. We're taking the checkered flag and we're going for it past that 166 Ferrari in a D Type Jaguar at Castle Combe. That is how you celebrate historic racing. That's how the HSCC celebrates historic racing. Hopefully this is a bit of an experience for you as well. Granted, not quite the experience I'm getting inside this D Type. I say inside, it's quite brutal in here with the wind on my face, but I don't feel like I'm inside anything. I will never get the chance, I don't think, to sit in a car like this and follow a car like that and be in a grid like this. And perhaps you'll never get the chance to see something like this live either. The marshals are out, enjoying the action. They're taking photographs as well. Great to see everybody being able to enjoy these cars, because of course that's what historic racing is all about, and HSCC makes these cars and this racing accessible. We've got some amazing action to come today after this recreation 1966 race, and we'll be bringing you that action on special stage in 4 weeks' time. 12 cars though right now taking to Castle Combe, to the racetrack where it all began 50 years ago, some of which did so years ago. The same drivers, that one behind me, Bernard Worth in that Ferrari Type 166, if you are just tuning in. It's a 2-litre V12 car following the D Type that I'm riding in, and that was here 50 years ago being driven by Bernard. I believe the race was won by a Frazer Nash, was it? Not sure. I think the original race was won by a Frazer Nash, although I could be wrong on that. Had that many conversations with so many wonderful people this weekend that some of them blur into one, but I'll keep this going. We're going in now. Finishing this recreation lap. Doesn't that Frazer Nash look glorious? Spectators here, enjoying the sunshine, enjoying this spectacle, because it really is a spectacle. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Probably not quite as much, but thank you to Ian Hedden for that amazing experience. And I was delighted via the glory of Periscope with its stupendously high production values to be able to bring you that experience live. So I hope you did enjoy that. We've got more action from this and the other races and spectacles this weekend at the HSCC 50th anniversary at Castle Combe in the TV show. In about 4 weeks' time, details will be on the website and online. But in the meantime, you can follow all the updates, see what we're up to on Twitter at Paul Woodford 84, at SSTV Race, on Instagram as well. Same applies on there. This is quite special. We're driving into a special marquee that's been set up to house these cars this weekend. Craig, our special stage cameraman there. And it just reminds me of, I don't know, Salon Privé or Le Mans Classic or something like that, these cars. Some of them priceless. Some worth millions of pounds. All lining up in their stables after a run out on track, stretching their legs, blowing the cobwebs out. Some of these cars never get a chance to race or drive. So it's as much an experience for the car as for the driver in some cases. I'm going to leave you now. I'll bring you some more live content if we find some time later in the day, but we've got some proper work to do now. Ian, thank you very much for that experience. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Great to bring the car out on track.
It is, yes. Very good.
Ian Hedden, who built this very D-Type recreation in 1990. Thanks for joining me.